says, brothers and sisters, if someone is overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves so that you also won't be tempted. Carry one another's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone considers himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Let each person examine his own work, then he can take pride in himself alone and not compare himself with someone else. For each person will have to carry his own load. Today we're talking about how we are called to live life together. In our Christian walk, we are in every single way in this together. But for some reason, as I talk to people, that doesn't seem to be the first thing that people think of. In fact, I could kind of talk about this. What is the first thing you think of when you think about church? What do you think is the purpose of the church? Or I'll put it like this: why do you come to church? Because we can maybe have different answers, or maybe this hasn't been defined or taught well enough, where there is a void in purpose and meaning, people will always insert their own purpose and meaning. And so because this question doesn't seem to have a firm answer, hasn't been taught well, we've inserted what we think that church is all about and what we think church should be doing. And this has caused something called consumer Christianity. That is, I come to church and this is what I expect. So church becomes not about us living together as family, but it becomes all about us and what I feel and my experience. You ask questions like, am I getting my needs met? Do I feel a connection with others around me? How was the greeting team? How was the Sunday school teacher? How was the worship team? Did I know and did I like the songs? How comfy are the chairs? How nice are the bathrooms? How dynamic was the preaching? You end up asking, how was my experience? But is that what church is about? About your experience, your personal experience? Or is church meant to be something so much more? For some of us, I would say, many in the Christian faith, they would not see that church is about anything else but themselves. You say that church is about my spiritual walk and my experience with Jesus and my preferences. In fact, this gets so bad that as you look across the numbers, especially in the Southern Baptist Convention in America, you'll notice that the numbers are dwindling for people attending churches. It's because we haven't taught that we're supposed to be in this together. We've taught that it's all about you. And so now people are starting to get that, and they ask questions like, or say things like, I don't need to go to church. It's all about my relationship with the Lord, right? Well, I experience God more on the ball field. I experience God more in the deer stand. I experience God more in the lake. So why would I come to church? Especially when so-and-so did this and so-and-so did that, and it's just a bunch of hypocrites. So if it's all about me, then I'm going to do what I want by myself. And there is not a more dangerous place to be in this world than trying to be a Christian by yourself. So is church really all about you and your preferences? Or when you become a member, when you come to church, you getting to be something, a part of something so much bigger? And so Paul's going to address some of these questions and show us that the church is not about our individual walks, not about our weekly gathering or our weekly spiritual conference. Instead, the church is about walking the spiritual walk together, walking in the Spirit together. So today we're going to talk all about that we are in this together. I have 3 points today. My first point is going to be, we have to help people in sin. We have to help people in sin. We have to bear one another's burdens, and everyone has their own load. So let's start with this first point, that we have to help people in sin. Because we're covering such few verses, I'm actually going to read the verses that we covered today. Verse 1 says this, brothers and sisters, if someone is overtaken in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual, restore such a person with a gentle spirit, watching out for yourselves so that you also won't be tempted. So what's going on here? Paul is now in the part of his letter where he has explained all that he wants to. Now in this final chapter, he is going to apply everything that he has taught in the previous 5 chapters. So if this is your first Sunday, trust us, this is a pretty good application. And so if you need to, read back over the first 5 chapters after you leave here, and you'll see exactly that, right? So now he's in the application mode of, okay, that we're supposed to walk in faith. And that our Christian walk is not about our works. Well, what does that mean for me and my life? And the first thing that Paul wants you to know is that if someone else is struggling, you need to go help them. If someone else is struggling with sin, you need to help them. And this isn't a new concept for Paul. In fact, he says earlier in this book, in chapter 5, verse 13, he says, for you are called to be free, brothers and sisters. Only don't use this freedom as an opportunity for the flesh, but serve one another through love. For the whole of the law is fulfilled in one statement. Love your neighbor as yourself. And he didn't make this up. Jesus has said, love your neighbors as yourself. But what does this mean? See, again, I think this is one of the things that we just try to apply for ourselves, instead of really trying to get to the core of what Jesus has said and what Paul is saying here. What does it mean to love one another as yourself? You might say something like, it means if someone asks me for help, Brant, then I go and I try and help. If they need help with the project, if they're strapped for cash, I'm going to help them out if I can. Okay? Or you might think, oh, that just means don't be mean to people, right? You need to wave at them when they drive by. You need to have a smiling face. If you don't need to yell at people. You don't need to be rude to people. You're just trying to be nice. But is that what loving your neighbor as yourself actually means? So how does Paul apply love your neighbor as yourself? He applies it like this. When you see someone struggling with sin, you go and help in a gentle spirit. That's what loving your neighbor as yourself looks like. You know what this means, guys? Your Christian walk is not all about you. Your Christian walk is about you and the people who are around you. Yes, it's about your family. Yes, it's about your friends. But it's about everyone that God puts around you, especially those who are your brothers and sisters in the church. That is what your Christian life is about. Now, this goes way against what many of us were taught. I know, because I grew up in Mississippi too, guys. I was taught when someone's struggling with something, don't bother them. Let them handle it. I was taught, don't get involved. That's between them and the Lord. But here Paul is making clear that the Christian life says that you do have to get involved, that you do need to help out, that you do need to reach out a helping hand. In fact, this is what's happening in the book of Galatians. Paul says a verse before verse 1. So in verse 26 of chapter 5, he says, let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. Now, why does he say that? It's because that's become a problem. Now, why has envying one another and provoking one another become a problem? Because the Galatian churches have decided that Christianity is all about them and their works, and if they reach a certain level, it should be about their preferences. It's all about them, them, them. And so when they don't get what they want, they'll envy people. When they don't get what they want, they'll provoke and they'll bully people into getting what they want. Understand, conceit means that you are super vainful, that it's super full of vain, super prideful. It means that you've made life all about you. You know the song, "You're so vain, you probably think the song is about you." That's conceit, right? And then you have provoke. That really means to bully someone. And envy, that means to be jealous over someone's gifts. So you now have an entire church, because it's all about their works, who are envying one another and thinking that they should be congratulated for everything, and they should be in the highest positions, and they should get what they want, and they will bully people to do it. Now, why is that? Because they've made church all about themselves. When you make your life all about you, when you make church all about you, you will run over people. You will begin to hate other people. Remember, we talked about the works of the flesh. That's a work of the flesh. You can see those things in your life if you try and make church all about you. The Galatian church had a ton of pride. And they're not the only ones. I think a lot of their problems probably reflect what you see in 1 Corinthians, where Paul has to say, what I mean is each one of you says, "I follow Paul," or "I follow Apollos," or "I follow Cephas," or "I follow Christ." Is Christ divided? Was Paul crucified for you, or were you baptized in the name of Paul? In other words, trying to gain position, they would be like, well, I'm on so-and-so's side, and I'm on so-and-so's sides, and this is who I want to listen to teach, and this is who I want to listen to teach. And Paul's like, whoa, we're all on the same team here. The works of the flesh are dissension and division and conceit and envy. It is very easy to allow the works of the flesh to enter into the works of the church. Then what should be done? If we know this is what happens when people try to live life by themselves. Paul says when you see anyone in sin, you need to help. If anyone is caught in any transgression as a result of conceitedness, envy, you start to see them bullying other people. People can fall into all sorts of other deep sins. Bad habits, character flaws, poor attitudes, and so on and so forth. And how is this to be corrected? Because what I was always taught is you just don't talk about it. You just say, oh, that's so-and-so. She says the craziest things. Oh, that's so-and-so. You know, he does that, but he doesn't do it at church. So, let him do his own thing. This is supposed to be corrected by those who are spiritual. That's those who are walking in the Spirit. Guess what? That should be all of us. Those who are walking in the Spirit should seek to restore them at all cost. In fact, this word, restore, is actually this word for if you break a bone, you set the bone. If any of you had a broken bone that had to be set, that feel very good? Feels pretty bad, doesn't it? But it was necessary. See, I think so often we see the sin of other people's and we go, it's not necessary to help them out. It's not necessary to do anything about it. It's not necessary to say anything. Keep out of it. Paul says it is necessary. Again, this goes against everything I was taught. Here in the South, I said, people always told me, don't get into other people's business. Or they would say something like, it's not my place to say anything. Or they would say, don't go stirring the pot, Brant. Or they would say, that's between them and the Lord. And what I was taught to do is if somebody was suffering with something, I walk by them and I go, bless their hearts. Oh, bless their hearts. They just up to no good. Why? I was taught that was polite. I was taught that was respectful. and I was taught that that's what you do. What we are reading here today, guys, Paul is saying that's not polite. That's not the good thing to do. In fact, you're letting people suffer for the sake of suffering. It's literally like this. Imagine that I fell into a pretty deep hole, and I'm not athletic. I can't get out. And you guys walk by, and they would say, oh, that's between him and the Lord. People walk by and go, bless his heart. He really can't get out of this, can he? What? I don't need that. What I need is somebody who's willing to get down in the dirt, to get dirty, to reach out a hand, and at least help me back up a little bit. You go, well, sometimes people don't allow it. Look, all I could do is reach down a hand. It's up to them to grab it or not. But so often in the church, we are okay with being openly sinful and saying, that's not my business. That's not my place. And we end up not helping anybody. That's not loving. That's not caring. That's enabling. This is one of the many reasons we are called to be members of a church. Because people are in one of two places. People either need help or they need to help. And so if you go, life's going pretty good right now, then you need to help. You need to help. And if you're not in church, if you're experiencing God on the lake or the deer stand or whatever, you can't give or receive that help. How do we know how to help? Here's where we have to really improve in church. We have to improve to know where to help. How do we do this? Because in the South, where I grew up, and where you guys probably grew up, we were taught not to be open about anything in our lives. We were taught if there was a skeleton, you stuff it in the closet as much as you can, and you hope that closet door stays locked, right? And so so we could be able to actually help people, we have to be very involved in people's lives. That's the first step for us, church. A church full of people. I know that you have things going on. I know that you're busy. But if we're wanting to be a church that does what Paul says, if we don't want to be a church full of bullies, if we don't want to be a church that's full of people that make church all about themselves, if we want to be a church that is really serious about walking in the Spirit, then we have to be a church that's close together, that really lives in one another's lives, so that we can know what's going on in people's lives, and that we could actually have the right to help them in gentleness. Let me make a little bit bigger point of this. I'm not telling you after this service, if you know some kind of gossip about somebody, that you gang up on them and yell at them, stop doing it. That's not what Paul's saying, okay? Paul is saying in gentleness. That means you have to earn the right to do it, and you have to be gentle with them. Maybe what they need is just to know that what they're doing is wrong. To have someone else say it. I have seen so many people in my ministry that were living in the wrong way. And I went out of my way to say, hey, you're better than this. And that's all they needed, to turn everything around, to go down to their knees to repent. But I had to earn that right. And I didn't yell at them. I didn't shake them. I just said, hey, this is what we're supposed to do. This is the truth. As hard as it is to say this is what you need to do. And that is what Paul is calling us to do. Because see, gentleness isn't weakness. It's strength under control. The goal is not to crush them with guilt. It's to lift them up with grace. Think about this. How did Jesus treat Peter after Peter denied him 3 times? Did Jesus just get all in Peter's face? Did Jesus start yelling at him and put his finger in his nose? No. And he said, Peter, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Then feed my sheep. That's what gentleness looks like. I love you. You love me. I'm telling you this to better your life. Because this is the right thing to do. Listen. True love means that we intervene. That's uncomfortable. Helping someone in sin is not being nosy. It's part of being a family. That's what I did when I grew up. If someone heard that Brant said something at school, you know who they'd call? They'd call my dad. And my dad would sit me down and say, Brant, we don't do that. If I started acting up and my friend heard that I did something that I shouldn't have, my friend would call me up and say, you shouldn't have done that. It's not being nosy. It's being gentle. We are carrying the weight when people cannot carry it themselves. And not just in easy little things, but actually, listen, bear one another's burdens. And this is what Paul is talking about. This is my second point, that we bear one another's burdens. This is what he says. Carry one another's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. For if anyone considers himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Let each person examine his own work, and then he can take pride in himself alone and not compare himself with someone else. What Paul is saying is that we have to help other people. Have you guys ever moved out of a house or something like that? I don't like calling people to do things. That's one of my weaknesses. I try and do everything myself, and I found myself trying to carry a sectional by myself. Guess what? I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. So I had to call somebody over, and they had to take one end of the sectional, and I had to take the other end, and we carried it together. Now listen. While I was able to carry it together, I had to have somebody else carry the other end. It would have been much easier for them not to come over, not to pick up the other end, but it would have been impossible for me to do without them. Understand, that's what our Christian life is like. That it is impossible to carry the whole thing by yourself. You need people to pick up the other end. And here's the other thing. Many hands make light work. That's why we're in a church. So it's not just one person picks up the other end. You have an entire church full of people that can help you carry that burden. An entire church full of people to where now your burden is nothing. Again, when I've moved and I actually got some help, you know what I ended up doing? I ended up not even lifting a thing. I ended up saying this needs to go here and this needs to go there. How light is my burden then? Pretty light, right? That's what Paul's trying to tell you. Don't try and live this life all by yourself, crying at night because it's just too hard and it's just too heavy. Let the church help you out. Let the church be here to lift up any burden that you're going through. But I want you to really hear this. Because as a church, I hope that we want to fulfill the law of Christ. That sounds pretty good, right? That what Christ wants us to do, we want to do, right? Yeah? I would like to see some head shake or something. Like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do what Christ wants me to do. How do we do that? Paul tells us. Carry one another's burdens. In this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. If we are not involved in one another's lives, if we do not try and carry the burdens of one another, if we are not honest with people and trying to help them out of whatever sin that they're in, we cannot actually fulfill the law of Christ. That can only happen when we grow close together, when we're involved in one another's life, when we help people out where they're struggling, and to carry one another's burdens. And let me tell you, I'm so encouraged by this church. Right? I'm so encouraged by the people who are here. This really is a helping, loving church. And I think that you guys have seen the benefits of that. You've seen the Holy Spirit move. You've seen the blessing when that happens. But I know not everybody's helpful. I know not everybody's involved in everybody's life. We have some people on the outside looking in. I just want to encourage you. Let your next step be to be more involved in this church, to be more involved in people's lives, and watch how God uses that for good. Well, how do I do that, Brant? How can I do that today? Call and check up on somebody. That's such a little thing. Send them a text. That's so not even a big deal. You could even set up your text messages to send later. So if you're just thinking about them, maybe praying about them, that's a great thing to do. And it's 1 in the morning and the Lord's just working on you. Set up your text to send at 9 a.m. No big deal. But check up on people. Pray specifically for someone's hardship by name. And offer tangible help. Offer tangible help. They need groceries, give them some groceries. They need childcare, give them some childcare. They just need somebody to listen, man, just sit there and listen. It means so much. And listen, I am here today because people did that for me. I'm here today because people have bared my burdens. And I bet you could say the same thing about your life. We must be willing to do that for others around us. And let me tell you, while it is a beautiful thing to help carry others' burdens, we must realize we have burdens to bear as well. Which brings me to my last point. Everyone has their own load. Everyone has their own load. Let me tell you that this is going to mean 2 big things, okay? 2. 1, you can't judge a book by its cover. You don't know the whole story. But 2, you will be judged with the load that God has given you. Let me talk some about that. So you can't judge a book by its cover, right? Imagine that there's someone who came to church, and let's say they look, like on a scale of 1 to 10, they look like a Christian 6, right? They go to Sunday school, they know the Sunday stories, they look like a Christian, walk like a Christian, talk like a Christian, but then they're saved. They don't change their life too much, but they start doing a devotional maybe once a week. They start maybe attending Wednesday night when they didn't. Now imagine that there's another person and they are a Christian 0. I mean, just really, really tough life. Didn't grow up in the church. But over the next year, they went from a 0 to a 4. I mean, they're reading their Bibles every day. They're attending as much as they can. They're really trying to get this straight. Which one of those would you look at? The 6 that became a 7 or the 0 that became a 4? Which one of those would you look at and say that God is doing the most through? Most of the time, we would say that person who went from 6 to 7. We'd say, oh, they're coming on Wednesday night, and man, they look like us, they talk like us, like they can really be a part of who we are. That person who went from a 0 to a 4, their life is still messy, right? They're still trying to get stuff together. They're trying the best they can. Listen, God is doing the most through that person who went from a 0 to a 4. That person is seeking God the most, even though it doesn't look like it on the outside. If you were able to look at their heart, you would see what God's doing. In the same way, we can't make quick judgments on people. We don't know their story. We don't know what they've been through. One thing that is really hard for us to get here in the Bible Belt South, people who have been in church their whole lives, is how people don't know the Bible. That blows our mind. That sounds like a problem halfway around the world, right? But in Pueblo, Colorado, where I came from, I encountered people all the time who didn't even know the basics of the Bible. People would ask me, who is Adam and Eve? People would ask me, who is Moses? They've never heard this before. And so for a lot of us, we end up making church very good for those who are already good at church. But we don't make it very easy for those who aren't good at church. We use a lot of jargon. We have a lot of unexplained rules. But let me tell you, I'm not trying to step on any toes, but this is true. It makes us more pharisaical, makes us more like Pharisees than we want to ever admit. You look like us, you follow the rules, you do what we say, you get our jargon and language, and until you get it, I don't even know what to do for you. Is that what Jesus wants? I think what Jesus would want us to do is for those who are way far away from God, that we reach out a hand and we do everything that we can to bring them up with us. Not just the people who are easy to grab, not just the people who already understand the rules, the people who are far off. That we have to reach those people and make it easy for them as well. So we can't judge a book by its cover. We don't know what God's doing in their heart. But here's the big thing. Everyone has their own load, yes. But God is going to judge you by the blessings that He's given you. When we hear that everyone has their own load, the first response that I thought of is like, oh, thanks, Paul. I needed an excuse, right? Thank you, Paul, for recognizing that I'm busy, that I got things on my plate, that there's reasons why I can't do certain things. Thank you, Paul, for making me saying no an easy thing to do. That's not what Paul's doing. Paul is saying that everyone has their own load. Everyone has been given some blessings or not given some blessings. Everyone struggles with their own sins and their own personal demons. And you will be judged by the gifts and the blessings that God has given you. Way too often, I hear people say, well, I can't do this. I'm too old, retired. I hear people say, oh, that doesn't fit in my schedule. You didn't even look at your schedule. It doesn't fit. Too often I hear people say, oh, I don't know enough to teach. I don't know enough to tell people about Jesus. Despite you being in Sunday school for the last, 50, 60 years, some of you? Maybe longer. You will be judged by the gifts and the blessings that God has given you. What are you doing with the blessings that God has given you? When you don't have a lot on your plate, are you trying to help others? When life is going good, are you reaching out to those around you? Are you trying to help those who are struggling, who even are struggling with sin, to bring them up together? Do you consider your Christian walk as something that you do communally, not just individually? Or do you continue to say, I'm too busy, or honestly, I don't want to? Look, I don't know what any of you are dealing with today, more than what you've told me. I'm sure that there's some of you who are dealing with guilt from past mistakes, temptations that won't go away, grief from the loss of a loved one, stress and anxiety from everything going on in your life, financial issues, difficulties of your jobs, health issues, maybe all of them at once. We cannot control our situations. We cannot control our calling. But we can control whether or not to choose Christ in the midst of it all. Let me say that again. We can't control our situations. We cannot control our calling. Man, we can't control most variables in our life if we're being honest. But we can control whether we choose Christ in the middle of it or not. This isn't new to the Bible. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is at the very beginning of the book of Ezekiel. In Ezekiel chapter 1, what you see is Ezekiel, who's supposed to be a priest, so he's supposed to be in Jerusalem at the temple. He's not there. He was taken away from Jerusalem, away from the temple, and now he's in Babylon. And most of the people who went to Babylon, they started living and acting like the Babylonians. They started accepting their gods and their traditions. But when you see Ezekiel, he's actually by the river washing his clothes to purify them for God. You know what this means? Ezekiel was not in the place that he wanted to be. Ezekiel was not surrounded by the best people. Ezekiel, in fact, could not do what he felt called to do at all. But you know what Ezekiel did? The best he could where he was at. Can you do that today? The best you can where you're at. You know what happened because of Ezekiel's faithfulness? God came in crazy majesty. Read Ezekiel 1. Look how God shows up. I mean, he's rolling. And he actually changes his calling from priest to prophet. That only happens because Ezekiel is doing the best he can where he's at. Let me tell you a story. In Pueblo, my main deacon, my head deacon, he ended up getting stage 4 cancer out of nowhere. Fairly young guy, pretty healthy guy. One day he goes on a vacation, can't keep food down, goes to the doctor the next day, it's stage 4 cancer. Terrible. And before you're worried about him, the Lord healed him. He's in full remission. Praise the Lord. But every time I went to visit him, I kid you not, he would introduce me to all of the nurses that were there. He would introduce me to patients who were there. Even though he is in the hospital, dying of cancer, his family worried about him, not knowing what financially that's going to look like, not knowing what they're going to do without their dad and their grandpa, because he has a bunch of young grandkids. You know what he was worried about? Doing the best he could where he was at. And he was trying to create relationships with people, to love on people, and to tell people about Jesus. Dying in a hospital bed, he's still telling people about Jesus. What's your excuse? Each of us have our own load to carry. And God sees our heart behind it. God knows your heart. And we must faithfully carry our load. And we have to ask ourselves, am I choosing Christ in the midst of my struggles and walking in love towards others? Or am I choosing to do what I want to do by myself? Here's my main point, okay? We have to walk with others. Christianity is not something that you are allowed to do individually. It has to be done with those around you. Let me also say that true love isn't passive. It restores, it bears burdens, it helps others with their struggles. Do you live your life actively trying to help people, or sit back and go, well, if they would ask me, maybe I would do something? You know, there was a lot of studies in World War II of how the Germans felt about their Jewish neighbors being taken off and put into camps. And for most Germans, they said they didn't like it. But you know what they did? Nothing. They were trying to passively love them. They stood by and said, bless their hearts. We are called to actively love one another. That's how we fulfill the law of Christ. That's how we get to be a church that walks in the Spirit. That is how we get to be a church that receives all the blessings that the Lord has for us. I pray that the Lord will speak to you on that this week and do a new work in all of our lives collectively. Here's my challenge. If you could do one thing this week, call one person who you know is struggling. Just give them a call. Somebody who's just been sad recently. Somebody who maybe you saw on Facebook just had like a sad post. Somebody in your life that you just could tell something's off with. Give them a call. That's an easy first step so that we can begin to fulfill the law of Christ together. Understand this is nothing new. Christ bore all of your burdens on the cross. He saw us in our sin and our shame after creating the entire world, and he says, I'm going to rescue those people. So he came fully God, fully man, born of a virgin. He lived a sinless life, also that he would bear all of your burdens in a way that you can never bear yourself. And he died, rising from the grave 3 days later, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting, eternal life. Jesus bore your burden so that you could bear the burdens of others. I pray that that would be your heart, and that would change your mind, and begin to change all of our lives collectively as we move forward to fulfill the law of Christ. Let's pray.